So hello and welcome everybody to another video. In today's video I'm going to discuss another chapter from my book Human Inversion, which I wrote back in 2023, kind of all about all the lockdown period and that kind of oppressive time we were in. And I wanted to find solutions, and as some of you know that I did the films during that time, and a way of like self-reflection, looking at yourself and how you can deal with the external situations without getting too wrapped up in them. So this book was written for the reason to kind of make people take on self-responsibility and become self-empowered as well from negative information, because there's a lot of negativity around at the moment. So I start with each chapter with a quote, and the quote in this chapter is by Philip K. Dick, and he was the writer of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was actually the book that influenced Blade Runner. And Philip K. Dick was a dystopian sci-fi writer. He wrote many novels and stories in the 60s. His ideas were so original at the time, but his ideas have become more of a reality the more we've kind of developed as a human civilization. And one of his more poignant films, which I'm sure a lot of you know about, which is very interesting because this actual technology is around now, and that is Minority Report. But the basic idea is they can see the crimes that people are going to commit in the future, and they get arrested before they've even committed them. And I'm sure some of you know, when you look at the world news, this has actually gone on already, and this has actually happened in parts of the world. So Philip K. Dick was a very insightful writer, just like Arthur C. Clarke, all of these sci-fi writers of the 60s and 70s. They had an insight into this reality. Maybe some of them had information and knew of the technology that was available, especially Arthur C. Clarke, a very interesting writer he was. So the quote is, "The unconscious is selective when it learns to listen for," and this is where the mind gets completely programmed. What it will actually do is shut down and what other possibilities and meanings. And I believe this is what's happened with science and certain curriculum and education that we've been taught in our reality, is that it's actually had a reverse effect, that it's shut us out of other possibilities. And really something to be aware of, because we don't want to shut down possibilities, right? We want to keep open. And we don't know everything. We don't learn everything. Just because we have the internet and we know a certain level of knowledge, there is still much more knowledge to attain. So this is chapter 11, and this is spiritual battles. The different vibrations of the spiritual battle are constantly resonating around us and have done so for a very long time. Such a conflict goes back to prehistory and can be seen in many archaic sites and heard about in tribal stories. We have had many advanced civilizations on planet Earth, and every collapse seems to happen when there is an extensive disconnection from accepting the potential of spiritual knowledge. To understand what this spiritual conflict is about, you are first going to have to understand more about the astral plane that is around you. So we've had this slow degrading of certain practices within spirituality, and obviously the first one is religion. Religion has become very, very distorted to a point where we're actually fighting, and people are fighting in the world over religious beliefs. And religion, actually at the core of it, is actually the connection to our spiritual self. But obviously there's been so much corruption, as we know, in history. The Catholic Church, various other organizations that have got involved and infiltrated this, because it's obviously a form of power. Religion gives people power. And obviously bring it up to speed to where we have in today's age, the biggest religion of all we have is money. The vibrations of the spirit world are something that you cannot see and touch, because they exist outside of this 3D holographic reality. Just because such a location has not been proven to exist by Western science, it does not mean that academic deceptions of the schools, colleges and universities on planet Earth have any validity in regards to this subject. We must remember that we only perceive 2% of the electromagnetic bandwidth. The unseen is always disregarded by academics, because the controllers and the manipulators know that is where there is immense power. We have thousands of stories and experiments that reveal the shimmering existence of the spirit world, and also gives indication to the fact that life after death is actually part of an ongoing process. So I often wonder if that energy, that controlling, that manipulation that goes on in the human consciousness, this is beyond our spectrum of seeing. So this is actually happening on an astral level, and this is intercepting us, and it's because we've become so conditioned and programmed, and people have become so righteous in their egos that they can't see that other spectrum, and it shuts down. When you go into meditation and deeper states, mind states, and you can start exploring yourself, yeah, you'll see that there is other things existing in this bandwidth, and yeah, they're not necessarily as physical as you and me. The vast luminescent expanse of the astral plane exists beyond the material world, and this location has been focused on by the Native Americans and the Aboriginal Australians, because for them it represents the only way of life. But now those cultures have been partially destroyed. Much of Western science has been taught with a limited set of boundaries, which are set to a limited frequency, just like a bandwidth on a radio. But from looking at prehistory, we can see that most humans had a more advanced sensory awareness. The civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis have become essential to the overall learning which humans need for their own development on planet Earth, because those civilizations were scientifically more advanced than the version we exist in now. So there is no doubt that we have had advanced civilizations with very advanced technology, and very, very different type of technology to how we use it today. Now that's why I've always spoken about the ether and the fifth element, and these idea that there is something that we're not conscious to in existing in our reality that maybe we can tap into, and this can harness, and we could use that energy in a certain way. One example is the John Searle generator, which I spoke about a few weeks ago in a video, and you can clearly see that this field of energy does exist, and it is being used, and it's very possible that this is what UFO and UAPs are flying through as well, or where they're able to bend space-time. So the vast amounts of occult technology on planet Earth have been censored from the public. Just look at the patents which the US Navy have created over the last 30 years to get an idea of what has been achieved. Such technological advances could easily solve all problems of humanity, but that has not happened. So why is that? Instead of always trying to find solutions to the outcomes of the problems, we never actually solve the core problem. The systems of control and manipulation can only be created when there are followers, as individuals like to become unconscious and be led, even though they may be lied to. Most individuals allow themselves to be deceived. They disregard lies and go back to looking at the results of the problem, but not what created the issue. It is no wonder why television soap operas are so popular. You only have to look at the US Navy patents to realise what level of technology is out there. And these technology is, these are free energy devices. These are submarines that can power themselves, things like this. Very incredible technology. And they're used for warfare, exploration maybe as well. We have this technology available and it's there. The question we want to ask is, why isn't this technology put out into society? Why are we not using this technology, and why are we using it for warfare? Why are we using it for negative purposes? These situations do not save humanity. There's never been a time in history where a war has saved humanity. A war has killed a lot of people, destroyed communities, destroyed countries. But it doesn't help any situation, and the only people that benefit from it are the people in the arms trade and the people at the top making money. Ultimately, they are the people that actually benefit from it. So how have we got to a point where we converted these systems into the use of warfare when these systems could be benefiting us? And if we were getting benefited, everyone would be very much more happier. We are not taught about the astral body, and most individuals therefore are not aware of this ancient knowledge. But when it comes to self-healing, everyone who becomes physically restored with this method is perceived to have experienced a miracle, or it was a result of a random occurrences. However, self-healing is very real, and sickness doesn't exist for those who have a complete awareness of the self. Of course, you may get sickness that passes through your body, but when you are aware of it, the correct diet can always help to nurture your immune system. We have the pineal gland, which is a very important part of our bodily functions. The pineal gland is at the top of our spine and at the back of our brains. It releases melatonin, which is serotonin derived hormone that modulates sleep patterns. Because of our diets and our working lives, we have become disconnected from our pineal gland. When the pineal gland is not active, our melatonin levels are not renewed, and we therefore cannot enter our dream time, when the dream times and sleep cycles are essential so we can connect to the self. The pineal gland is where the third eye chakra is located, which resonates in the astral plane and has the ability to access these altered states by the use of meditation and various exercises. Those altered states and lucid dreaming are vibrational processes where we can self-heal or connect with the correct remedies to make us more conscious. If we could remove all the toxins and chemical pollution from planet Earth, we could then perceive our minds and bodies as the essential transmitters of the correct frequencies. With the right mental and biological self-discipline, we can also become more aware to truly experience the physical human, because the human body is a lot more than just a body. It is an instrument which, when tuned correctly, has the ability to control this dream time. We are mighty and powerful incarnations. Our bodies can react the same in a dream to whilst we are here in the material world. So where are we when we dream? Are we in our bodies or in our minds? Or are we taken somewhere else? When we sleep, the neurons in our brains are switching from a waking state to a sleeping state, and the brain is going through different levels of REM sleep. As we sleep, we eventually reach the deepest levels of REM, which is when we actually dream. Sometimes dreams can seem very realistic. Can we ever prove what dreams are? Are we in a dream while we exist in the material world? So we have the same impulses in our body when we dream in dream time as we do in this normal physical reality. When you're going into this deeper theta state in your dream time sleep, your body is completely reacting to how you're interacting with the dream. So then you pose the question about this reality, and there is really evidence building more and more daily, on a daily basis now, really, where this is getting to a point where we're understanding that this physical world is to some level some sort of simulation. We are in control of this reality. We have the ability to maneuver and project our thought out into reality and create our own dreams. And obviously, again, with the New Age movement, the manifestation and the idea of attracting abundance. Some of you may remember The Secret, which came out, I think Rhonda Bryan was the writer of that, and it had lots of people on there, Tony Robbins, Esther Hicks, all various speakers, some really great speakers and great information, but there was a lot of distortion in it. It kept you in, I felt, it kept you in that bubble of that. So you kept in that brand, you kept in that knowledge of The Secret, like, because it's not a secret, and that's ultimately what I'm getting at with even just the title. This is what we are. We sleep on average for 26 years of our lives, but that is now decreasing. Now we use computers and mobile phones. Most will just see dreams like a fantasy adventure film or a Mills and Boon romance novel, where they completely remove their own personal experience of it and wake up to say, that was really weird. However, They never question how that dream could be part of their personal life and experiences. This means they continue to remain separate from the self. Many never question they could be suffering from a subconscious trauma or a mental health issue, or even think that is even possible or important in any way. Throughout history, the concept of the dream time has been used to bring messages to the self and connect us with the spirit world. Many different tribes and cultures believe the deities reveal themselves during this time. Some even use dream time to explore the remote territory of their enemies. The routine of dreaming mostly gives us a subconscious interpretation of what this material world is about and helps us to analyze our own personal issues. But sometimes the dream time can reveal so much more and will then give us insights and even psychic visions to further understand the invisible aspects of this 3D holographic reality. The different tribal cultures are our last remaining physical evidence of the more condensed vibrations of the spirit world and the dream time on planet Earth. Is it by any accident that historical truths and tribal customs of Australia constantly seem to be under attack? Most certainly the landmass of Australia is the largest remaining segment of the Lemurian continent. Australia is the homeland of the Aborigines, who are complete believers in the dream time, where they believe the material world was created. The Aboriginals use dream time as a way of accessing their knowledge and accessing what they need to understand and about this reality and the paths they need to undertake. And they actually they believed, they're very strong believers in ley lines as well. They believed in what was called, they called them song lines. So the interesting thing with the Aboriginals is that they never ever took any psychotropics, and not like all the other tribes, South American, Mayan and other indigenous tribes that actually took some sort of ayahuasca, peyote, whatever it may be, mushrooms, to actually access this plane. The actual Aboriginals used sound, and really they were way, I feel, quite incredible. And I think they were using acoustic levitation techniques within all this as well. That's all speculation, but we're an amazing culture. Firstly, the astral plane brightly exists around this 3D holographic reality and is an expanse which has been talked about by numerous esoteric cultures, religions and tribes over thousands of years. It is very well known that the secret intelligence services on planet Earth have employed what they call remote viewers to go into the astral plane. So this is no imaginary place as much as we are taught to believe it is. Many shamans talk of the spirit world and the astral plane, and it is known that they even sometimes fight battles within it. It is therefore not always a friendly place, but it's a place where your consciousness exists without your body. Just think of the power an individual could have if they knew about this knowledge, and the influence they could have over this material world whilst they exist in that invisible expanse, because others could never perceive that location. The astral plane has been used for remote viewing, in which the secret intelligence service is known to use to help solve a case, or even spying, even sometimes to territories on the moon or planet Mars. Again, the expanse of the astral plane is not something you can perceive or touch, but it does interact with planet Earth. Another reason to be conscious, because the spirit world exists around us all the time and therefore can sometimes invisibly affect us. After an ayahuasca session years ago I spoke with a shaman about how I felt about what happened during the experience, and I wanted just to ask him some questions, and he told me about something that happened in South America among shamans, and he said, and this was connected with the astral plane, so he was explaining how there was basically a battle in the astral plane over territory in the physical world. So there were two shamans and they own different parts of the land, or they were on different parts of the land. And the shamans went into the astral plane, and while they were in this astral state, one of the shamans fired a dart into the other one's eye. And when the shaman woke, who had the dart fired at him, he actually was blind in one eye. And really, what I'm getting at is the power of this astral plane. And this goes on in many other ways as well. When people go to sleep, sometimes they wake up feeling ill, or certain things happen during their sleep cycles that they can't explain. Many individuals have out-of-body experiences which are sometimes connected with near-death experiences, or NDEs. They have seen a tunnel of white light, or a relative or close friend appearing before them just as they pass away. Sometimes they fall into a trance and then observe themselves from an elevated perspective. Once I awoke from sleeping, I found myself outside, where I was sitting on a leaf in a back garden, 10 feet off the ground from where I was seated. I could perceive the other gardens that laid out on the back of the houses. Just after this happened, I then awoke up again in my bed. I got straight up and looked up at the tree which I'd been sitting on. There was no way this could have physically happened, but I had definitely been sitting there, and I even felt the cold air going through my hands. I am very aware of my imagination, but this situation actually happened. It was obviously not a dream, and I was in my astral body. A spiritual conflict has been happening since the dawn of time, and although there is not a clear answer as to why we came to exist the way we do, the partial truths and misinformation we have been taught in schools, colleges and universities just does not make any logical sense. The communities of planet Earth have been established with too much divide and opposition, and this cannot be ignored. There is always a reason as to why a conflict happens, so we should never forget that fact, because our education has been deliberately censored and distorted. The education system, when it was first formed, this is no theory, and you can check this out yourself. It was formed to condition people to go to work. So it was never actually, so they did get to that point of self-actualization. They just stay in the bottom bandwidth of the Maslow's needs, you know, and they stay in that security safety zone and never step out of it. The imbalances on planet Earth cannot just be blamed on Western capitalism. That is not the problem when you look at the root cause. The doctrines of religion are consistently attacked, or warfare is used to create opposition between cultures and religions. So this is really about the struggle of light and dark. Even though the controllers and manipulators disguise their intention behind pretending to want the best for humanity, corrupting the truth seems to be part of the game. But you cannot suppress truth, as it will always resonate eventually in this reality. Where historical warfare has occurred are locations which always hold spiritual connections to the astral plane. The decimation of the Native Americans and how the cultures of American Indian tribes were destroyed, the genocide of the Aboriginal Australians, which all seems to be happening again. We are repeating history and ignoring the facts, or changing facts to suit a specific narrative. These are all cycles where civilizations have broken down. It is no different now to how it was then. There seems to be a constant destruction of archaic knowledge which is stored in our DNA. Look at the wars over the last 30 years and then look at the history of that place. The history of the Middle East starts to become very interesting when you look at its origins and the prehistoric artifacts. These were very archaic conflicts that have happened many times before, within the same cycles but just at a different time. The earliest known civilization was in Iraq, so on this planet, and that was Sumer and Mesopotamia and these locations. So these were ancient civilizations that were in this, and if you know about the history and the temples that were in Iraq and that have all been bombed now and destroyed, the Middle East is a very interesting area when you look at all the history to that area and the knowledge and the ancient sites. And I don't think it's any mistake is a war. Obviously we're told other reasons for why that war's happening, but really the core of it, it's there's a destruction of this history and destruction of, I believe, the human spirit. It is also no coincidence that in the historical places where turmoil and warfare have occurred, you always find paranormal activity or evidence of a supernatural presence. Sometimes even UFO sightings or other bizarre happenings seem to be invisible, active in such location. These kinds of activities happen when trauma has become trapped between the material world and the astral plane, which then becomes displayed as a repeating imprint of that event. So you only have to look at somewhere like Skinwalker Ranch and what's gone on there and the imprint. I believe it was Navajo Indians that were meant to put a curse on that land where they were betrayed by another tribe of Native Americans. And the Navajo put a curse on that land, and obviously the trauma that happened on that particular spot, there is some very weird paranormal activity in Skinwalker Ranch, and there's no denying that there's something there. It's something really odd. And I think this goes on all over, all the ley lines and ley points all over the earth. There's certain points in London, for example, what you'll find what's happened on these ley nodes and the ley lines is there's been a lot of, slaughters and beheadings and stuff like this, or burial chambers or tombs or graveyards, things like this located on these ley lines. And I believe that that's energetically, that's creating a circuit and adding to the circuit of negativity and these things that we don't want, and again this distortion. Large numbers of stone circles and ley line sites in the United Kingdom were destroyed by the Roman Empire because the stone circles were certainly not just places of worship, and the Roman legions knew this. Such places were where geomagnetic and electrical currents once resonated. All of the chapels, churches and cathedrals in Great Britain were constructed on megalithic lines after the Roman legions invaded Celtic Britain during 54 AD. These powerful ley lines spread out across planet Earth and interconnect throughout an intensely vibrant energetic grid. Because of this reason, the Roman Empire tried to destroy and invert the frequencies of the ley lines in Britain and mainland Europe. So there was an inversion during that Roman period, and that's what I've seen from all my sort of research and knowledge, is that there was a real big inversion created, and we had these ley points that were just basically destructed. They were dismantled and that changed as well. And the Romans, I believe, wanted to understand this knowledge, and they wanted to hijack this knowledge from the Druids and all this kind of stuff. It was very, very barbaric time, that, and it wouldn't have been a nice time to be alive. But think like 2,000 years later, here we are talking about that and information, and maybe this is the time now it's ready to resurface. Another form of this spiritual conflict arises from the fact that the multinational corporations are steadily destroying the ecosystems of planet Earth so they can increase profits. The corporations will constantly eradicate any form of individualism and repeatedly like to take over independent organisations and businesses. So localism cannot thrive. Most corporations function like huge financial mechanisms, which are there to manage the consumer programs for the controllers. This is why the corporations push a version of this 3D holographic reality, which they want you to believe is truthful. You could look at artificial intelligence in the same way, because it will eventually result in perceiving humanity as defunct and useless within the bizarre material world that has been created. We have been in a visible conflict for a very long time, which has played out in ways that are not readily apparent. We have been indoctrinated with the idea that humans need to stay in biological survival mode, where they can be distracted with fear. This has been created to function as an endless diversion, so we never perceive the truth about this reality. Many are controlled by sexual lust, pornography, consumerism, whilst the mainstream media keeps us in the loop and therefore in the program. It has never been more obvious as to what is going on, and if you don't see what is happening, you should look closer. Start by switching off the partial truths, misinformation, sensationalism of the mainstream media. You only have to look at who funds the mainstream media to understand what their objectives are. The mainstream media have a lot to answer for. They really need to be more responsible in what they're projecting out. People are switching away from media, and the reason why that is because people are not, or these corporate entities are not speaking truth, or they're distorting it, giving you a version of the truth, and that's very dangerous, not just for you but for them. In this digital age, we are now replacing that connection to the spirit world with an artificial intelligence, where tablets and mobile phones are the false light that we stare at. Almost like we are at a church prayer service, we seem to keep bowing towards the black mirror. These digital devices, while each of us walks and ignores the 3D world around us, lots of individuals are sleeping less and therefore not able to access their deep REM sleep. So their dream time is not arising during the times when they sleep. Most individuals are reliant on their electrical devices for their daily answers, and with chatbots now appearing online, life will start to change very rapidly. Many could end up becoming completely removed from relying on our own memories or intuition. There was a time when you could get lost around London with an A to Z Maps pocket book, finding winding cobbled streets or concealed shops and houses, but now Google Maps tells you where to go, shows you the places before you've visited. Everything about this material world is becoming so augmented, synthetic and digitized that we are truly entering into dystopian times, where the original version of planet Earth could be left behind as we then let such technologies rule our lives. The metaverse is another example of where this problem could lead, because some might end up actually leaving this 3D world altogether. This will eventually lead to a situation where individuals can upload their consciousness to the machine and be trapped in these kinds of technologies forever. This is not science fiction anymore. What is happening is very real and will keep on occurring if nothing is done to prevent the problem. We are gradually replacing spirituality with different technologies and allowing it to dictate rules and regulations to us. The process then restricts our freedoms, which in turn impacts our spirituality and puts us into lower vibrations. Once this occurs, we have become disconnected from the universal creator and the self. Many do not realize that artificial intelligence has been in the making for many years and believes it knows more about you than you do about yourself, which is probably true in a lot of cases, but we have to be careful that we don't let this synthetic programming take over planet Earth, because day by day we are moving closer to it. Although different kinds of technologies are helpful, they should not take over your lifestyle. Unfortunately, this has become the case for so many, and now the younger generations have become entirely focused on its controlling influence. It really is disturbing when you come to London or a city, and I noticed it is in the city most of the time, not really out of London as much, but people looking at their phones, it really is obsessive. And it's got to a point where it's kind of strange to talk to people. It's strange if you make eye contact with people. Well, don't get me wrong, not everyone's like that. There's people that still smile at each other, which is good. But I'm talking about like general human contact. And when we look at the younger generations, how they're interacting with each other, you can see that this is developing, that everything will be running through this device of some nature. And really, there's no way of stopping that. This is a big problem and it's coming about. And I know we say about the fear of AI But I just think that in itself is we should be worried about them situations and thinking, just be more conscious. And then you've got parents giving their kids devices and pads and on mobile phones, and they have to get them because all the kids at school got them. You know, it's all become so stupid. In these times, you cannot let your emotion get affected by this situation, as hard as that is to do. You have to draw the line and make boundaries for yourself. This is a spiritual conflict that many do not understand, and you do not need to worry if others have chosen a path that you do not agree with. Every kind of negative situation will eventually fold in on itself and implode. Then we will reach a brighter future. How long will that take? I don't know. But the important aspect is that you continue to remain connected to the truth of who you are. Holding integrity in this reality, it doesn't surprise me why we have a control system like we do. I mean, the system, I mean, people are quite out of control to some level. So there does need to be, you know, some sort of shaping of society. I mean, it really... And I don't mean we need to control consciousness, but we just some sort of order in society, because people are loose cannons. There's a lot of, you know, the problems on this planet are created by humanity. You know, it's humanity's communication amongst themselves, awareness really comes down to it. I mean, if every human being on this planet was self-aware, what a world this would be, right? The vibrations of the Great Awakening have been gradual, but this process is now beginning to accelerate because most individuals are becoming self-aware. This is inevitable, or as truth surfaces. The comfort zones of most individuals will become a discomfort, and with that restlessness and frustration, many will start to ask more questions. And of course, the Great Awakening will then continue by becoming conscious in yourself. You will become aware of the spiritual conflict, and you will perceive that it can help you understand the depth of the times we are living in. The challenges we are confronted with in the future will be extensive, but they can easily be resolved. Be comforted by the fact that you are safe and you are a conscious person who knows who you are. Start by appreciating the incredible life you have chosen to have. Do we attribute challenges to unhappiness, or should we face them and take action to see it through? If we don't take on the challenge, we only contribute to our unhappiness, and some individuals will even believe they are victims. So why have you chosen to incarnate here at this time? You chose to come here because you are life itself and you are consciousness. I know some of you might not be spiritual, or say I'm not a spiritual person or whatever, but you are. You are. That's fundamentally what you are. You're a spirit that incarnates into this physical world. So this physical body is just a shell. There is enough evidence, and from my own personal experiences as well, to say that there is an afterlife. There is somewhere you leave, when you leave this life, leave this physical body, your consciousness travels and moves on. And we're only at the beginning really of understanding all this, but really with this happens. I've had so many near-death experiences in my life early on that I can know that I've been in those places. Look into the Monroe Institute in America and look at Robert Monroe's work and what he did as well. And the other one as well, if you go back to ancient times, you can actually look into what the Greeks called incubation sleep. And the incubation sleep was involving us connecting to this astral plane. So this is something the ancients did, and we've lost this knowledge as we've gone on. So this isn't evolution. We haven't lost it for our benefit. We've lost it because so people can control and manipulate this reality. And that's coming from years of looking at this information and years of knowledge I've looked at. So I'll give you the shortcut and just save your time. You don't have to go down all the conspiracy rabbit holes. It's not necessary, but understand that you are part of this bigger spectrum of consciousness. You are part of this higher plane of existence that exists around this one. But thank you all for watching. That's the chapter from my book, Human Inversion, which is available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. You can also purchase on my website. And I hope it's useful for anybody, and it gives you some insights into about this spiritual battle we're on. There's so much more I could discuss, and there's a lot more on the channel you can watch as well around all this idea of what we're going through at the moment. But I see this as a spiritual battle. It's an internal external battle that's going on. And it comes down to the core, which I've always spoken about, and that's the doing the inner self work, and not looking out there and thinking that's going to correct all your problems. Is going within and solving them core issues, so you can project the best life for yourself, you know, the best world for yourself, the best reality. And that's what we want to do on planet Earth. We don't want to kind of be brought down and feel low and negative and depressed and all these things. But yes, that was Spiritual Battles, which is a chapter in my book Human Inversion. There is a lot more of these chapters that in the member section, and which you can get access to if you become a member or a Patreon. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll be doing a lot more of this. I want to get through the whole book and get all the chapters on the channel, so please check them out coming up in the next few weeks. But until the next video, I'll see you soon.